skiing is a selfish act. Like our jobs are very selfish, but kids expose all of your flaws as a human, really, and they make you have to be selfless, you have to be present, you have to be all of these things that might be a challenge for you as a person or you as a couple. So
this is Chris Benchetler. Chris is a professional skier, artist, director, climber, designer, father, and husband from Mammoth, California. Chris grew up ski racing until finding his path outside of times and scorecards through his love for freeride skiing and filmmaking. From there, Chris built up and out, embracing his passions in and outside of skiing while molding them together to create his own authentic identity. In our discussion, we talked a lot about how Chris has found himself within an ever-changing outdoor industry and world, but also how he has navigated his newer role of being a father and the superlative moments he has witnessed throughout his endeavors around the world. Please welcome Chris Benchetler.
The number one thing that I'm interested in is, so you grew up in Mammoth, but you stayed in Mammoth.
I did, yeah.
Why? So what is it about Mammoth and what is it about California that keeps you there? Because you could go so many different places nowadays.
That's a great question. I think a lot of it is the environment, the amount of sun, the climate, everything. And then Mammoth in particular has catered to my style of skiing really well. And then as I grow and evolve as a person and as a skier and a rock climber, I've just realized how big the Eastern Sierra is and how much opportunity is there for me to just evolve as a person. Like I said, just kind of explore my own backyard and get deeper into the mountains. And when I break down all the things that are important to me and the environment that I'm in, and sense of community too, really, I think there's kind of just a whole bunch of elements that keep me there, and I want to raise my family there, and I feel very connected to Mammoth and the Eastern Sierra. So
I grew up in Steamboat, and I totally had that sense of community too. Just growing up, you go to school till 3 and then you ski from 4 to 6 every night. And we had I don't know if you've ever been to Steamboat, but there's this thing called House and Hill, which is there's lights that light up the whole hill, and no one really skis there except all the kids. It's so incredible having that community that's so supportive around being healthy, athletic, and just good people too.
Yeah.
So when did you leave, as far as your skiing career taking off and transitioning from racing into, I guess, free ride at the time?
It probably happened closer to when I was 15 when I started traveling. And then I think I went to my first airplane was to a contest in Vail for the US Open. So I had never traveled outside of home. But yeah, from a ski perspective, I had never traveled to ski until all that started kicking off.
And then, so from there you got straight into film, which at the time, the more popular route was the competitive side, but you were just straight out of the gate, pretty much backcountry. So, so can you talk about your development of finding your style and just, I guess, your love for film and I think art at the time as well through that versus the more competitive side?
Yeah, a lot of it came from snowboarding, really. My brother was 2 years older than me and pursuing snowboarding while I was still racing. And his best friend was this cat, John Jackson, who is an incredible snowboarder. And my brother lived with Matt Hammer, who was another huge inspiration of mine. So they were carving the path. They had already, bought snowmobiles and they were filming for Standard Films at the time. So I was watching snowboard movies pretty religiously and so inspired by the way they rode the mountain, the way they looked at the mountain, whether it was a turn or, a butter or an air or whatever. And skiing hadn't really gone down that road yet. We were still playing catch up with snowboarding in terms of what could be done on park jumps and what could be done on handrails and all of that. So I was just right at that perfect time to be super inspired by that movement, and like you said, a lot of skiers, which comes down to a personality thing too. I just never had the desire to win at all costs, which you need to be a competitive skier, and I'm competitive with myself, and I'm a perfectionist to some degree in terms of style and tricks and all of those things. You have to be to get to a certain elite level. I feel like you have to really have some competitive mentality. But at the end of the day, when I would go and do contests and bail at the open or whatever it was, I I never just had the drive to be the best. And it was just, I was way more excited if the course got canceled and we had a bow day and I could just ski the mountain, So I had different ambitions and different passion from the very beginning. I think it's just all a matter of your environment. And since I had my brother and John Jay and Matt and these guys always riding POW and filming videos, it was just my source of inspiration, really. And it's just where I wanted to take my skiing. And then I met, Pep and Pollard and Andy Mayer and all these people that had a similar vision to me. So we just kind of turned into a collective of like-minded people and went on our own path.
Can you talk about building your career back then versus like how people build it now? They're radically different, and there's probably one contributing factor that kind of changed the whole game. And can you talk about your relationship with that?
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know what you were going to say is the contributing factor. I imagine it's the internet, but it's
Yeah.
definitely was, I started with DVDs. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember if I was ever in a VHS or not, but it was long enough ago that you spent your whole season working towards a collective movie project, where then that whole dynamic changed, and then the onset of social media and all these things. And I'm still very much in, like I've seen it all, I guess, from the old style to the new style. And I have done well for myself because I've just tried to stay authentic. I didn't intend to do a ton of social media. I remember Sage Catabriga showed me Instagram in New Zealand, and I was like, oh yeah, it seems kind of cool. I like taking photos. And then I just always tried to stay true to myself and find my path throughout this ever-changing world, And so try to do it for you and be authentic as best you can. I know, like, we're in a culture where, like, social media and likes and all these things. I mean, there's documentaries that are terrifying. I'm sure you've seen them.
The social dilemma.
Yeah, all those kind of things. Like, it's clearly within all of us, myself included, but you're looking for approval for every single thing you did, where there was a sense of freedom when I was doing it because it was approval within myself, like that grab didn't feel long enough, or that style wasn't exactly what I wanted. So it was just perfecting myself for the right reasons, not because I saw something on the internet where someone said my style was bad. It was, I don't know quite how to articulate what I'm trying to say, or it was just going with my intuition and my feelings of what I wanted to accomplish. And so now I just feel bad for kids because there is no real path in terms of how to do this correctly. I've stayed this whole time just authentic to what I care about, whether that's skiing, art, surfing, climbing, building a van. I've done all these things that, because they meant something to me and I cared about them, it made it come across authentically. And now, funny enough, it's like the trend, like I didn't know building out a van would turn into every other person has a Sprinter van, like I guess it was just something that I wanted and kind of always dreamed about, and then it turns into be a fad. And the same with putting art on products, like I that's such a common occurrence now, and the amount of inquiries I get for my artwork is a lot, like so much so that I've had to hire on help to kind of run my art social media and do customer service and just have help in that regard, so I can actually communicate with the people. So to answer your question, I don't know the formula, and I think just be authentic.
So a lot of athletes, they at least it depends on the athlete and the scale the athlete is at, but they struggle with the stress of, okay, so you sign a 2-year contract with like a company, a ski company, and then you know that that contract's going to end, and you're like, okay, am I going to be able to re-sign? Am I be able to like keep doing my dream? And you're trying to form relationships with companies, but things are changing so much, and you're just trying to stay relevant and do all of these things. But you found your relationships with the companies that you've been worked with. I mean, you've been with Atomic for like what, 10 years now?
Yeah,
More.
since I signed in technically in '07, but it we kicked it off in January of '08. So yeah.
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 So over 10 years, you've been working with GoPro and Dakine for a long time. So could you talk about building your relationships with those companies to a point where, I mean, you've been with them now for like over a decade, and the pros that have come from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to that fear you speak of, signing a 2-year deal and trying to stay relevant and all those things. Like I've really been able to stay authentic to myself. And I think once you drop that fear, and if you are confident in what you're doing and you're, expressing your creativity, whether it's through the films you make or the tricks you do or whatever it is, like I've had the freedom because I haven't had to win a gold medal, so I haven't had to follow a cookie cutter path by any means. Like I don't have to stick up with trick progression. And sure, there's certain tricks I want to do and I'm inspired by the new kids, but I'm equally inspired by how a ski turns, in comparison to how a surfboard turns or whatever. So how I've been able to navigate that is just by exploring surfing. Like the normal way would have been to keep skiing, keep progressing that, but I'm like, oh well, I'm pretty curious like about hydrodynamics and why a ski reacts this way, and how are surfers able to release their tail in a turn, and look at surfers that inspire me. And so it's just allowed me freedom. Being creative has allowed me freedom with my sponsors, and I'm lucky because most of my ideas have worked. Like if I was like, I want to make a movie with the Grateful Dead, and then I failed miserably, then that's not going to happen. But since Fire on the Mountain worked, and I like I saw it through, and I was investing in myself, and self-funding these things and doing things because I was passionate and because I believed in it. That's, I guess, that belief in myself has allowed me to keep my sponsors since the beginning, because I'm passionate about more than just skiing and passionate about art. I can kind of inject my ideas into the brand beyond just the skiing. You know what I mean? So
At what point did you realize that you should go from, okay, I'm a skier, I'm a pro skier skiing, to maybe I should like try and incorporate surfing into skiing? Did you have like a moment where you realized, because no one had really done that? Honestly, you kind of pushed that, and there were a couple other people, but when did you realize that that was something that you felt like could add to who you were outside of skiing?
I mean, a lot of it came to my surroundings and people I was influenced by. Like I've found surfing because of my now wife, girlfriend at the time. She took me to, her uncle lived in Kauai, and he's recently passed. So I say lived past tense, but he was in Kauai since the 80s. And so she took me there for my 19th birthday. We've been together for a long time. And caught my first wave and was like beyond addicted. Just the feeling of gliding down the wave was so reminiscent of powder, and I had grown up skateboarding and wakeboarding, like I said. So I was very familiar with standing sideways, and the only reason I skied was because of twin tips and because of being in that era with those people and not needing to learn a new sport. So that I was already inspired by that side of things, and snowboarding had similar attributes to surfing and certain things that inspired me. So once I found surfing, I kind of went down the rabbit hole of surf films and found, a lot of Taylor Steele's films, and then was just drawn to certain people, like who's now a great friend of mine is Rob Machado, and certain surfers like Craig Anderson and Dane Reynolds. There was these guys that really spoke to me, and how they manipulated a surfboard. And then, but I think Rob in particular, just mastering every type of board and every type of wave, and just the ease, it really translated to how I saw the mountain, and just drawing a line down a wave is so reactionary and so intuitive to that person. Like you don't, they're thinking 3 steps ahead. And I don't know if you've ever surfed before, but it's pretty complicated to learn, like you're just, when you're learning, it's just all happening way too fast. Like the wave's closing out in front of you. How do I get around this section? Like, where do I turn? What do I do? Like everything. Whereas when you watch a good surfer, it's just, it's everything's in the perfect place. There's like not a drop of water out of place, like where they get their speed, where they do their turn. And then they're all of a sudden, 10 steps ahead of what you even would have saw if you were on that wave. So that mentality spoke to me for skiing, because we have these blank canvases in the backcountry, and so many skiers, even in my generation, but before I met Pollard and Pep and those guys, were just go fast, hit a big air, land on your back. Like it didn't speak to me. Skiing was just kind of weird in that sense. I don't want to say it was lame, because I'm a skier and I still love it. And I still, I still like look up to a lot of those people. And, or like Shane McConkey, for instance, was an amazing human and someone who changed the course of skiing forever. Like he took a water ski up to Alaska, before there was rocket skis. Like that vision is insane. And so I'm so grateful for that, because that carved a path for me, but the way they looked at mountains wasn't how I was looking at mountains. So I was drawing inspiration from these other places like surfing. And Pollard was really similar. Like he inspired me so much, and we talked so much. Our wives would joke with us all the time that we were boyfriends. We'd talk for hours on the phone about different surf films that we should try and make. And I don't know if you found after the Sky Falls, there was about 10 years before that of all the movies, and Pollard made everything himself, and he was self-funding everything. So we never had money for music. And so we would just create web edits before the internet was a thing, and before, like, we were the first webisodes that I can recall. And we wouldn't get music rights, sadly, because we couldn't afford them. So everything pretty much got pulled off the internet eventually. I think he got some kind of cease and desist or something. So a lot of those aren't findable anymore, but it was some of the best times of my life. And those 4 individuals were very inspired by surfing too. And we kind of all surfed together and skied together and just talked about, our inspirations, which then bleed into one another. So I guess that's how I found it. And I mean, I had another person who played a massive role in my life and shaping me as a human is JP Auclair, who's since passed away. But he and I went to New Zealand together, and it was supposed to be a ski trip, but some random things happened where he had to deal with some court drama. And it was very, very unfortunate, but nothing crazy.
Sounds like a crazy story.
It was kind of crazy.
Court drama.
It was the day before I got there. I mean, I could share it. He had broken up with his girlfriend, I believe, and he was very drunk in a bar, and he was wasn't being crazy, but being rambunctious. So the bouncer, I think, like pulled him, put him in a headlock and was pulling him out, and he was actually choking, couldn't breathe. So he bit the bouncer, and he had a huge court deal because of it. But so he didn't ski that trip because he was dealing with that. And I missed this party, and I just gotten into New Zealand to come stay with him. And my first run, I was following this other skier who's now a doctor. He's a ear, nose, and throat specialist, I think, John Sims. And he came up short on a jump, and I was behind him, so I came up even shorter and bruised both of my shins and my heels super bad. So then JP was dealing with that. I couldn't really ski. And so we ended up just getting in his car that he would leave down in New Zealand. He had this old, 1980 something Volkswagen that he named Kitty. And we drove it to the southeast coast of New Zealand and just borrowed some boards from Jossie's dad, Bruce, who's a epic surfer back in the day, lent us boards and wetsuits. And we just went on a surf trip together. And that was very early in my surfing career. So it was cold. It was kind of scary, just sharky feeling, dark water, lots of like just wildlife everywhere, humongous seals. There was penguins swimming around. It was like the most life-changing trip for me in terms of surfing, and it just got me hooked forever. And so I had like Hawaii and that, and then every summer we would edit our Poor Boys segments, and that was down in Hermosa Beach, because Johnny Cesare, who ran Poor Boys for a long time, was a big surfer. So it just, the surfing just kept evolving from there, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, I mean, that eventually, it's funny how you were like, well, yeah, we had the web edits and we were couldn't get any of the music rights. And then we were surfing in New Zealand back in the day. And then that culminated into like Fire on the Mountain, however many years later, where you have the Grateful Dead as the main music.
Yeah.
and then you're surfing at night with Rob Machado, who's like one of the most, like the best surfers of all time. That's like a pretty crazy
It
transition,
really is.
and like realizing a dream.
Yeah,
So
no,
cool.
hearing you say it, that's funny. I mean, there was a lot of steps to get me to Fire on the Mountain, but once again, the only reason I was able to pull that off, and thank God for good people that believe in passion. I mean, the president of Rhino Records and the people at Warner Music Group, and so many people helped me make that happen just because they saw my passion. Like, I think if I was a Hollywood film or even a ski film that was an actual production company that was trying to make money off of it, it would have never worked the way it worked. But because I was just a passionate kid that loved the music and had these ideas and concepts and had these relationships with surfers and snowboarders, and like the whole Bill Walton element, all of it was just, it was the perfect storm for passionate people doing something that they love. And so I'm eternally grateful for everyone involved with that, because it wouldn't have ever happened without the relationships, so.
Yeah, that's incredible. I have a buddy named Ben Shell. Shout out Ben Shell, and he's a huge Deadhead. And so he actually he loves your movie Fire on the Mountain, and he's a skier, but he grew up in like Philadelphia. So it's cool just to see how far your film has gone outside of just the like main ski community. But I asked him, I was like, hey, do you have any questions for Chris Benchetler? And he said, so obviously the Dead are known for their live performances and improv and stuff like that. So out of like 3,000, like they have so much. So where do you start, especially as like a fan of the Dead? And I assume you love a lot of what they make. So where do you start in picking like, okay, this is what I want for here, and obviously Fire on the Mountain?
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to start. But how do you go about going through all of that for that film?
So like picking the music for the film, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm very lucky. I mean, David Lemieux, he's the Grateful Dead's archivist and legacy manager. So he knows every single song. Like, he'll hear the first riff of the guitar and know exact year, exact stage it was played on. And before I met David and before he was our music supervisor for the film, I had been turned on to the Dead, which I feel like everyone needs some parent or uncle or someone that was a Deadhead to like show them the light, if you will, because most people if they just hear the Dead on the radio, it doesn't resonate the same as if you have someone who really introduces you to the whole experience, because
My uncle's the Deadhead.
okay, perfect.
Yeah.
They are an experience. So when you have someone like that that's close to you, that kind of, you see their love and passion and obsession with one band, you're like, what is going on here? So you dig a little deeper. And I had a person like that in my life. So I was turned on pretty early on. And so I had particular songs that I liked a lot. And then I started trying to play the guitar and started picking up more songs like that. And I'm still pretty bad at playing guitar, but, and then I, so I presented songs that I liked and that I listened to that I thought would go well with skiing, and proposed them to Lemieux, and he was like, oh, that's great, but you should try this version from this year, and then you should try. And they're really conscious of going in every show, which I didn't realize until I learned this, but it would pretty much go Jerry Bob in terms of songs they would play throughout the night. They would switch back and forth. And so they try to keep that consistent within their documentaries or their films they make or albums they release. So it's and I mean, albums they release, it's usually a show. So I got very lucky that I was able to do a vinyl LP with that soundtrack. But so that played a role into picking the music. There was a lot of elements, but the short answer is Dave Lemieux made it happen. And I just offered some advice, and then he gave me the ultimate songs that would fit well to the skiing, basically.
Yeah, shout out Dave Lemieux, because great film. It's just so fun. It's just simple fun.
Appreciate that.
And just cool to watch.
And
Stylistically too, it totally came together in the way that the music feels, with all the like psychedelic-y like overlays and the kaleidoscoping and stuff like that. It's super cool. So
thank you very much. Yeah. It was fun to make. We were definitely trying to treat the film like a spiritual journey, more or less, like with the night segment be as the peak of the whole show. And it was fun to be creative and fun to have the ability to use such good music and such sick athletes, like the whole roster. Everything about it was one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, it's kick-ass. Can you so just switching subjects real quick before how much time do you have, just to check in?
Yeah, let's keep going. You're all good, buddy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. I made you wait long enough. You just tell me how long you want to talk.
All right, all good. Can you talk about meeting Kimmy and how that all started?
Yeah, I mean, I was a child, really. I was just about to turn 17 and skied every day, worked at an ice cream parlor at night, and she had moved to Mammoth from Tahoe for college, so she's 3 years older than me, and she was coming in there with a friend of hers, which is funny because my boss's name was Chris, and his parents owned the ice cream parlor and the church next door, and his now wife was Kimmy's good friend, and so they came in together, and we both met them the same night, and we've both married them, which is amazing. But yeah, she came in and she knew my brother because my brother was a snowboarder, and so she had seen him on the hill, and she actually, I think what connected us spiritually so quickly was that she had lost her dad to cancer too, and so my brother's pretty reserved and doesn't share his feelings as much as me. And so she had known my brother for quite a few months or almost a year and didn't know that our dad had died. And so she found out, and then she just, after only a couple times of meeting her, she said, if you ever want to talk about losing your dad, and I was an open book. And so we just connected pretty deeply, pretty quickly. And then, yeah, pretty much ran with it from there. It's been a journey. We just celebrated 10 years of marriage too, which is crazy. But yeah, almost, I think that's 18 years together or something. Pretty wild.
Yeah, that's amazing. But So that all kind of started, like you said, from your ability, not ability, but I guess just like your personality trait of being like an open book. Um, so can you talk about like how that's like helped within your relationship with her, and then how that enabled you guys to develop?
Oh man, we're going deep here. Yeah, are you a marriage counselor too? Because no, wait.
I'm covering the full spectrum.
Yeah, no, she is an incredible woman, and we've of course had our difficulties and all the challenges that any couples face, but I think that open book mentality and just communication is, whether it's a friendship or a loved one, like communication is the only thing that's gonna get you through to the other side, and there's a sense of like, I mean, she's such a driven person. She's a badass snowboarder herself. She was the first woman to do a double backflip, and she just kills it. And so
That clip is nuts, by
there's
the way.
awesome. Yeah, she's rad. But so there's that sense of like support for one another, but there's also the I don't it didn't really expose itself as competitiveness until we had children, because it's like, whose powder day is it? Who should watch the kids? Who's, like then it exposed where our flaws were as communicating and as a couple, but going back to your question, I mean, just being open, being able to communicate, and being able to have the awareness and self-realization that, there is an issue here. I'm being selfish by being a male in the relationship with anyone with children. I don't know how many people with kids listen to your podcast, but it's just like, it is a very selfish act, and skiing is a selfish act. Like, our jobs are very selfish, but kids expose all of your flaws as a human, really, and they make you have to be selfless, you have to be present, you have to be all of these things that might be a challenge for you as a person or you as a couple. So it's been testing and trying on us, but we've also been more connected than ever, and had some challenging times. Our kid got super sick right before COVID hit. He ended up getting his kidneys failed and had to be on dialysis and all that. So that was just a eye opener as to what's important in life, but it's crazy.
Yeah, that's unreal. So before what's interesting is that you said how kids exposed like the selfishness and stuff that you associate with skiing and whatnot. And I guess just within wanting to do things for yourself, I mean, that's not necessarily selfish, but you said that. I'm not calling you, I'm not saying any of that. But what I'm asking is, it's just pretty crazy how you go through. So, I mean, you dated for 8 years and then you had kids. So you had Koa then 2 years after you got married, or how long after you?
No, quite a few years after, because
Okay.
Koa was only 3.5, and we've
Okay.
been married 10 years now. So yeah, we took a while to have kids because of those selfish reasons. And actually, the children conversation, I feel like, had we not had this happen, we maybe would have missed the boat for kids, because we were being selfish. And I will say it again, like, we loved our life so much, we could drop anything, travel the world together, go rock climbing for 24 hours, get stuck on a mountain. The responsibility is just so much less, and we were such similar people. Like, we were always outside, always active. And so going back to why we had children when we did, is her mom passed away from cancer, and she had already lost her dad, and she's an only child, and I had lost my dad. So we're basically have lost all family, essentially. And you hear about it takes a village to raise children, but it really does. And so it just allowed us, or not even allowed, but it made us, address like what was important to us. Did we want to have a family? If we are going to have a family, do we want my mom to meet our kids, like if she's not around for much longer, hopefully she lives for a long time. But just when you lose people in your circle, you start to just reevaluate. And so I think it made us realize that kids were something we both wanted and should probably try to have. So that's what sparked that, I guess, was just the loss of her mom.
Yeah. So so you guys had Koa, and then now you have Zeppelin, and you're both professional athletes. And how has well, first, how do you think the fact that you're both professional athletes still managing your careers has benefited your ability to effectively communicate within your marriage? And then two, if you weren't professional athletes, and maybe for people who are professional athletes who like are married to someone outside of their field, or even if like you work, like someone works in Hollywood and then they're married to someone who works out of the same industry they're in, how do you manage that? Or how do you think you have been able to?
Let me see if I follow here. Yeah, so like
I was all over the place. I apologize.
No worries. But I mean, I think what you're saying is like how have we successfully managed our marriage, and how do I think people that are in different lines of work would manage their marriage?
Yeah, that was a better.
No, I mean, you
summarized version.
Well, but I started to lose you with the second question on the first one. I mean, I think we've successfully managed, and I hope successfully, because we're happy and we're still very much in love, but you never know. Life is always evolving here, but I would say we've been successful by communicating once again, and just being open and trying to understand each other's needs. Like I totally get that in the first years of life, a mother is much more the lifeline of the child. She's breastfeeding, she is the life source for this baby, and so she has to be much more selfless than I do. I can still do my sports and activities and all these things, and as Koa's gotten older, like making sure that I take him to go adventure with me and give her time to find her happiness within sport or whatever it is. So just that's kept us, I think, happy and healthy and insane, and she was such an active person, and she snowboarded so much and did so much in the mountains that of course she's not what she once was. But I think coming to terms with that and understanding that it will all come back, especially if your kids, have passion and like what you do, then the dream is that you get to do it all together as a family. So I think, yeah, acceptance has helped us be successful in that regard. And then I think for someone that's in different line of work can sometimes be super helpful. Like I have friends that are like that, where the mom, it really wanted to be a mom and is totally happy being at home with the children all day. And my children make me so happy, but I still find peace. Like movement is meditation for me. I'm not the greatest meditator, but when I can go climb for a bit, or when I can go ski for a bit, it centers me and connects me, with everything that's important, and allows me to think and allows me to just express myself in a different way. So if I get those little bits every day, then I'm a much happier person. And so people that have a wife where maybe the kids, or maybe the being at home, and maybe it's, I don't personally know any husbands that are like full stay-at-home dads, and the mom go out and go, are out there, but I know they exist. Of course they exist. So it's just finding the partner that really understands what makes you tick, and vice versa. So I think that's how people will have to be successful, is just understanding that going into it, and knowing what's important to them and where their happy place is, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. What
Yeah,
I'm saying.
thank you for navigating my complex and convoluted question.
No problem.
Um, yeah. So you, in a way, are like following your dad's footsteps as far as you both raised children in Mammoth, um, and you're a father now. So what do you feel like you've learned as far as your perspective on your dad and who he was and how he raised you, as you find yourself in the same position that he was?
That's a great question. I sadly have a lot of, how do I say this? It's not, yeah, I guess I sadly don't have a ton of adult memories with my dad because he got sick when I was 14. So it turned into like just growing up way quicker than I probably would have otherwise. It was started driving him to work every day and not being able to ski or do the things that at that time I thought were important to me. So it's like being forced into a situation like that, you miss a lot of the growing up aspect. So, or the enjoyment of kids, and so from what I remember as a kid, like my dad was incredible. I always thought he was so awesome. He could shred on skis, he could do 180s on a wakeboard, and he did all these things with me. So, but what I'm trying to say is I just hope that I can share my passions and my experiences with my kids where they remember that more than how hard or how much I'm working. Like if I'm always going skiing and leaving them back. And that was just, my dad was the primary worker in our family. He was a contractor. So he was always at work except on the weekends. So I have a lot of memories of him at work and having to go, play on the job site or play on a tractor or whatever it is. And I have the luxury of raising my kids in the mountains and having more unorthodox hours and more freedom. So I hope I can just like share that passion for many years to come, because that's essentially what my dad did, but he was just constrained to work hours and weekends and needing to provide for his family, whereas I'm really lucky that me and Kimmy have way more freedom in whatever day we want to take. Like if Koa wants to go skiing in the backcountry, I could theoretically drop whatever and take him skiing in the backcountry, unless life changes in the next couple of years. But so yeah, that's I hope to mimic what he did, but just with more time in the mountains and more time doing those passion driven things.
Yeah, you have a post that says the process of laying a solid foundation and giving systemic instruction to a developing mind is a wild experience. Children seemingly absorb every single thing that surrounds them, from actions and reactions to respect, compassion, love, purpose, and the importance of life itself. In any form, whether that is an ant or a human being, there's clearly no handbook on how to properly raise a child. And every generation before us has faced many of the same challenges of guiding a new life through the human experience. I will clearly never know what the other underrepresented groups of our world go through daily, but I'm here listening, learning, donating, and trying my best to consciously guide an enlightened, kind, respectful, free-thinking, and passionate human to the future. And then you have a quote. Sorry, this is just long, but it says, our children pay a heavy price when we lack consciousness, overindulged, overmedicated, and overlabeled. Many of them are unhappy. This is because, coming from unconsciousness ourselves, we bequeath them to our own unresolved needs, unmet expectations, and frustrated dreams. Despite our best intentions, we enslave them to the emotional inheritance we receive from our parents, binding them from debilitating legacy of ancestors past. The nature of unconsciousness is such that, until it's metabolized, it will seep through the generation after generation. Only through awareness can the cycle of pain that swirls families end. So how will you go about teaching your child that awareness? And I guess let's talk about that quote and that post.
That's a deep one. Yeah, that was during all the Black Lives Matter stuff and just having to learn more. I mean, yeah, that's a tough one to unpack. And I will say, I think you said systemic, and I think it was meant to be systematic, where it was
It
like,
was systematic. I apologize.
yeah, there you go. But
Big
yeah, just
difference.
like, no worries. I
Systematic.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like teaching them structured things that, eh, yeah, to unpack what you said, I think just trying to navigate this new world that we're living in a respectful way, for myself included, but learning with my child, learning what's important, and trying to expose them to all people, all cultures, all everything, and knowing that we're all the same, under our skin. But it is a weird thing, because my I was raised really well. My grandfather, when they escaped Hungary, ended up in South or North Carolina, and he worked at a laundromat for 25 cents an hour, had to wear a sign around his neck that said, "I don't speak English," and he worked with only Black people. And I learned this as a kid, like he didn't understand. It was in 1956 when racism was a big thing. Not that it ever went away, obviously, with everything we're dealing with, but he would ride home on the bus to where he lived, and all of his employees, who happened to be black, or all of his coworkers, sorry, would help him like know which bus stop to get off of and all of these things. And he told the story. I can't exactly remember how it went, but in his very broken English and his understanding, was trying to understand racism, and grabbed his co-worker's hand, who was Black but had very worn hands, and grabbed his boss's hand, who was white and had, a white hand, and just pointed at each hand, essentially showing that it was the same color. And so he was raised in he came to America so confused and so like just new to this world, and always taught his son, who then taught me, that all of us are just people, is what I'm trying to say here. So yeah, so I mean, just passing off that knowledge with my children, and trying to continue educating myself, because I still, as hard as it is, it's like there's still certain things, even referring, I mean, I have a really good friend of mine's a Native American climber, and there's still so much that's not being addressed, like just how we've treated natives and our history as Americans and everything. And watching now from an outside perspective, he's an incredible snowboarder and climber, and people are still, even with everything going on, taking advantage of the fact that he's Native American, and trying to somewhat monetize like what he is and what he's created. Only now is he getting the support because it's an issue, so like trying to break that down in my own mind and expose that to some degree, and teach my children that it's not right, and try and just teach them the past, and teach them just how we got here, and all the things. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, I just have to keep learning myself, and just trying to teach my kids to be good people that love everyone for who they are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's obviously super important. But
Yeah.
so what has been the most challenging and the most rewarding part of being a dad?
Ooh, most challenging, I would say what I said earlier, just exposing my flaws as a human, my patience, my uh yeah, just selfishness again. Just like what I want. Do I want my kid to ski because I want him to ski, or does he want to ski? Those kind of decisions, and just patience is a huge one. Just like understanding that they're a developing mind, and that they are trying to understand feelings, and all of those things, and just having the time to just let them work through that and understand that they're going to have big feelings and tears and all of these things for reasons. And though it feels like they're whining or just crying for no reason, that you just have to let them find that in their own time. But sometimes it makes you like really test your patience, I should say. So that, and the most rewarding, whew, it's, I mean, there's things that happen every day. Like the first time Koa said I love you was, amazing. But just, I guess the most rewarding thing is seeing that he is a kind person, and I hope that's a reflection of us. Like, he's plays great at the park, he doesn't push kids over, or even if that happens to some parents and some kids, it's not a reflection of the parenting, I don't think. It's just like, you get what you get. But I am grateful, and I do feel like it's rewarding that we have a kid that's really kind and happy and all the things. So
Yeah. Would you say, so you come from, it's just interesting because you come from this incredible skiing background, traveling all over the world, and obviously having like lots of adrenaline and being exposed to things that most people aren't over such a consistent basis for so long. And how would you relate that adrenaline and the things that you went through, and comparing that to like the journeys that you've had just being a dad and being a parent?
that's a great question. So yeah, I guess. So how do I relate the adrenaline of skiing to being a dad and a parent? Essentially, I guess I don't know really. I mean, I don't think of myself as an adrenaline junkie necessarily. Like, I feel like I'm pretty calculated, and so that feeling that you get of passion or reward within a sport is similar to watching your kid succeed or climb a rock for the first time or do something that you feel is just a big milestone for him. Or if, not that my child's reading yet, but just writing letters from the alphabet, any of those little tiny victories are similar to the feelings that I get from skiing. And I don't know if that's related to adrenaline necessarily, because I'm not looking for the adrenaline rush, or I would be more of a base jumper, like skydiver type person, where I'm looking for just the pure enjoyment and the present train of thought, essentially. Like when I'm shredding or surfing or whatever, it's that moment of bliss of being present more than pushing my body or my mind beyond its limits.
Yeah, you ever get to go base jumping?
Shane McConkey tried to take me one time, and I was pretty grateful that it was raining that day, so I didn't have to go. He was gonna have me jump off a bridge, because I've never skydived, but I think I would like flying too much. It would probably feel pretty cool, I imagine. So I would like to stay away, because most of my friends that do it have passed away. So it's pretty high risk.
It's one of those things. I mean, I love, I don't know. Yeah. Like I relate to you in that I don't think I'm an adrenaline junkie, but I love just like outdoor stuff and just exploring. Yeah. And I've been lucky enough to do like a variety of activities similar to you. Like I grew up kite surfing with my dad, and now I surf and then climb and ski and wakeboard and do all this similar stuff. But that kind of seems like the end all be all, like the greatest. I don't know about the greatest, but definitely the most. I just don't know if you can get a crazier feeling probably than flying like 15 feet above the ground, going 200 miles an hour. But it also comes with the highest risk, and obviously it's pretty intense. So I don't know if I'll ever be doing that.
Yeah, no, totally. It seems pretty cool though.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. Like objectively it looks unreal for sure.
Yeah.
So, but so yeah, you've done a lot. Obviously, been over the world, and you're a dad now. But what makes you smile now? What makes you smile the most?
I'm pretty happy person. I have a lot to be grateful for. So, I mean, my children make me smile. Just with, use my youngest son as an example. Just like he's learning how to make noises and smile at 6 or 7 months old. Like that makes me smile just thinking about it. But also all the sports I love to do make me smile. My wife makes me smile. Like I'm pretty happy. I have a lot to smile about, I guess.
Yeah, that's a pretty incredible thing to be able to say.
Yeah.
But
Very fortunate.
oh yeah. But yeah, so I guess just in conclusion, what tips do you have to people who want to, I mean, you lived an incredible life and you followed your passions and been able to make a living off of them. So any quick tips to people who want to do the same?
I think we covered it in the beginning, but yeah, just stay true to yourself and let passion be your guide. I think I know it's not everyone has the same opportunity that I had. And there's a lot of people out there that aren't as privileged as myself and don't have access to skis or whatever, but whatever makes you happy, if you can just stay on that path and chase it, chase your dreams. And I think you'll make it happen, just find a way. And I feel like we talked about with navigating social media, all that stuff, I think the reason it's worked for me is because I've just stayed true to what I feel like is important to me and just being a passionate person.
Awesome. And quickly, so so I have a mix of people that, like, for example, I can research a lot about you, and you've done a lot of podcasts. You've done a lot of podcasts, and this stuff over the years where it's easier for me to come up with questions as like someone like that's having a conversation with you. But what have you found that works the best when, I guess, like being interviewed? Like what interviews and what conversations have you had that have, and the characteristics of those that have contributed to making you feel the most comfortable and like having the best time?
Well, I mean, you've done great. And I think being uncomfortable is good too. Like I was just thinking about the question you asked about the quote I wrote, I still am not comfortable enough with the knowledge that I have of like what the right way to answer something like that is, because people have been mistreated for so long, and I don't have experience there. So I think making me uncomfortable like that is great, and I think in regards to just making me think, I like podcasts that make me actually think and actually have to really look internally to try and find an answer, and not just the surface questions, like digging deep into who a person really is. And yeah, those podcasts are always the most fun because they're introspective, and they help you just think, and thinking is a good thing in this day and age. I feel like we all just have the quick fix of everything, where you don't have to spend too much time thinking. It's all just fast process everything. But
Yeah, I think that's incredible you brought that up, just because I mean I talk about that all the time with people, that just having like logic nowadays is such an incredible asset. Like just being able to make decisions yourself internally is like such an incredible skill to bring to the table. So it's interesting that you mentioned that.
yep.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, do you have any last words? Anything else you want to say?
No, thank you for the time, and
Yeah.
once again, thanks for sticking with me. Sorry it took us a while to connect, but
No, of course.
it was great chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, Chris, really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, buddy.
Have a great evening. Thanks again.
You too, bud. Take care.
See ya. Bye.